The first drops of rain hit my windshield as I turned onto County Road 47, and for a moment I thought the sky was crying for what I was about to discover. 22 years. That's how long I'd been gone, serving my country in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. 22 years of deployments, transfers, and promises to myself that when I finally came home, everything would be exactly as I'd left it. I was wrong about that. Dead wrong. My name is Robert, though most people call me Rob. I'm 63 now, with more gray in my beard than black, and a purple heart in a box somewhere that I don't like to talk about. I grew up on a cattle ranch in Montana, 500 acres of rolling grassland that my grandfather bought in 1947 with money he'd saved from working the mines. My father expanded it to 800 acres, and by the time I graduated high school in 1979, the McClellan Ranch was one of the most respected properties in the county. I had a younger brother, Daniel. Danny was born when I was 8 years old, and from the moment he came into this world, I knew he was special. Not special in the way parents say about all their kids. Danny had what the doctors called developmental disabilities. He'd never live independently, never hold a regular job, never have the kind of life most people take for granted. But he had the purest heart of anyone I've ever known. He loved the ranch, loved the cattle, loved watching the sun rise over the eastern pastures every single morning. When I enlisted in the Army in 1982, my parents made me promise something. They were both in their 50s by then, and they knew they wouldn't be around forever. "Danny needs someone to look after him," my mother said, holding my hands on the day I shipped out for basic training. "The ranch will be yours someday, Rob. When that day comes, you make sure Danny always has a home. Promise me." I promised. My father died in 1989, heart attack, while mending a fence. My mother followed him in 1995, cancer. I was stationed in Germany when she passed. I couldn't make it home in time to say goodbye, and that's something I'll carry with me to my grave. By then, I was already a career soldier. Moving up through the ranks and coming home permanently wasn't an option. Danny was 32 years old, and he needed someone to take care of him. That's when my sister-in-law, Patricia, stepped in. Patricia had married my cousin, Michael, back in 1988. They'd lived in Billings, about 2 hours from the ranch. And after my mother's funeral, Patricia offered to move into the ranch house and look after Danny. "We'll take care of everything," she said, standing there in her black dress with tears in her eyes. "Danny's family. You focus on your service, Rob. We've got this." I was so relieved, so grateful. Michael was a good man, worked as an electrician, and Patricia seemed genuinely fond of Danny. I signed over power of attorney for Danny's care, kept the ranch in my name, but gave them permission to manage it. I sent money home every month, $2,000 at first, then $2,500, then $3,000 as I got promoted. Over the years, I sent over $600,000 home. Money for Danny's care, for the ranch upkeep, for medical expenses, for whatever they needed. I called every month. Patricia always answered, always gave me updates. "Danny's doing great, Rob. He helped us move the cattle to the south pasture yesterday. He's happy." Or, "The roof needed repairs, but Michael fixed it. Don't worry about a thing." The calls were short. I was usually calling from a satellite phone in some forward operating base, and the connection was terrible. But I trusted her. I trusted them both. I should have known better. In 2017, after 35 years of service, I finally retired. Lieutenant Colonel Robert McClellan, multiple deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, and that Purple Heart I don't talk about. I'd spent the last 3 years of my career at the Pentagon, pushing papers and counting down the days until I could go home. Home to Montana, home to the ranch, home to Danny. I didn't tell Patricia and Michael exactly when I was coming. I wanted it to be a surprise. In my mind, I pictured driving up to the ranch house, seeing Danny's face light up when he recognized me, sitting on the porch with a beer and watching the sunset, like my father used to do. 22 years is a long time to hold on to a dream, but that dream had kept me going through some of the darkest days of my life. The rain was falling harder now as I turned onto the private road that led to the ranch. The wooden sign that said McClellan Ranch, Est. 1947 was still there, though it looked like it needed a fresh coat of paint. The fence posts along the road were weathered and sagging. I told myself it was just age, just time, doing what time does to everything. Then I saw the house. It had been repainted. Not just repainted, renovated. New siding, new windows, a massive addition on the west side that doubled the size of the original structure. There was a 3-car garage where the old barn used to sit, and a paved driveway instead of the gravel path I remembered. A Mercedes SUV and a Porsche were parked out front. I sat in my truck for a full minute, engine running, windshield wipers beating back and forth, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The ranch house I'd grown up in had been modest, functional, nothing fancy, but solid and well built. This looked like something out of a magazine. $600,000 over 22 years. I'd sent $600,000 for Danny's care and basic ranch maintenance. This wasn't basic maintenance. I turned off the engine and stepped out into the rain. My boots sank into the mud as I walked toward the front door. I was still wearing my old Army field jacket, and I hadn't shaved in 3 days. I looked exactly like what I was, a tired old soldier who'd just driven 1,800 miles to come home. I knocked on the door. The woman who answered wasn't Patricia. She was younger, maybe 35, with highlighted blonde hair and the kind of jewelry that costs more than a month's worth of cattle feed. She looked me up and down with obvious distaste. "Can I help you?" she asked, not opening the screen door. "I'm looking for Patricia," I said. "Patricia McClellan." "It's Patricia Beaumont now," the woman corrected me. "And who are you?" Before I could answer, I heard Patricia's voice from inside. "Who is it, Amber?" Patricia appeared behind the younger woman, and for a second, she didn't recognize me. Then, her face went pale. She pushed past Amber and opened the screen door, stepping out onto the porch. "Rob," she said, and I could hear something in her voice that I couldn't quite identify. Fear? Guilt? "Rob, my God, when did you get back? Why didn't you call?" "Wanted to surprise everyone," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Where's Michael? Where's Danny?" Something flickered across her face. "Michael passed away, Rob. 3 years ago. Heart attack, just like your father. I'm so sorry. I tried to call you, but I never got a call," I said quietly. She looked away. "The number I had must have been wrong. I sent letters to your last known address, but they came back. I didn't know how else to reach you. That was possible. I'd moved around a lot those last few years, and the Army bureaucracy wasn't always perfect about forwarding personal mail. But something felt off." "Where's Danny?" I asked again. "He's in the barn," Patricia said quickly. "He likes to spend time with the horses. He's probably out there now, even with the rain. You know how he is." I looked past her into the house. Through the open door, I could see marble floors, a chandelier, furniture that looked like it cost more than my truck. "You've done a lot with the place," I said. "We needed to make some improvements," Patricia said, and now I could definitely hear defensiveness in her voice. "The old house was falling apart, Rob. The roof was leaking. The foundation was cracking. We had to do something." "Must have cost a fortune," I said. "Well, yes, but we used the money wisely. Everything was for Danny's benefit, to give him a nice place to live." I nodded slowly, looking at the Porsche in the driveway. "That Danny's car? That's mine," said the younger woman, Amber, who was still standing in the doorway. "I'm Patricia's daughter. Moved back home after my divorce." I didn't remember Patricia having a daughter, but then again, I hadn't asked many personal questions over the years. My focus had always been on Danny and the ranch. "Can I see Danny?" I asked. "Of course," Patricia said. "He's in the barn. Just follow the path around back." She started to close the door, clearly not inviting me inside. "Patricia," I said, and she stopped. "I'll need to talk to you later. About the ranch finances. About Danny's care. I'm home now, so I'll be taking over again." Her face went rigid. "We can talk tomorrow, Rob. You must be tired from your drive. There's a motel about 10 miles down the road, in town, the Ponderosa Inn. They have reasonable rates." She closed the door before I could respond. I stood there in the rain for a long moment, processing what had just happened. I'd been expecting a homecoming, a welcome. Instead, I'd been directed to a motel. I walked around the house toward where the barn used to be. That's when I saw it, a small, dilapidated building, about 50 yards behind the mansion. It wasn't the barn I remembered. That had been torn down to make room for the garage. This was something else. A shed, maybe, or an old worker's cabin. The roof was covered in moss. One of the walls was visibly rotting, and there was a single small window with a cracked pane. The door was partially open, and as I got closer, I could smell it. Not the clean smell of hay and horses, but something musty and damp and wrong. I pushed the door open wider. It was a single room, maybe 12 feet by 12 feet. There was a cot in the corner with a thin mattress and a wool blanket. A camping lantern sat on an upturned crate, a hot plate with a dented pot, a card table with one chair, and sitting on that chair, wearing clothes that were 2 sizes too big and covered in stains, was my brother. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment his face was blank, confused. Then something sparked in his eyes. "Robbie," he said, using the name he'd called me when we were kids. "Robbie, is that really you?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. Danny was 60 years old now, but he looked 80. His hair was mostly gray. His face was gaunt, and his hands were shaking. He was wearing what looked like old work clothes, torn at the knees, and I could see bruises on his arms. "Yeah, Danny," I finally managed. "It's really me." He stood up, his movements slow and painful, and came toward me. When he hugged me, I could feel every bone in his body. My brother, who'd always been stocky and strong from working the ranch, felt like he weighed nothing at all. "I missed you," he said into my shoulder. "I missed you so much, Robbie." "I missed you too, buddy," I said, and I had to fight to keep my voice steady. "I'm home now. I'm here." We sat down on the cot, which creaked under our combined weight, and I looked around the shed that my brother was apparently living in. A shed, while Patricia and her daughter lived in a mansion that I'd paid for, with money I'd sent for Danny's care. "Tell me what's been going on, Danny," I said gently. "How long have you been living out here?" He looked confused, like he didn't understand the question. "This is where I live," he said. "Patricia said the house is being fixed. She said when it's done, I can move back in. But that was... I don't remember when she said that. How do they treat you, Danny? Patricia and Michael?" His face darkened. "Michael was nice. He used to bring me food sometimes when Patricia forgot. But Michael's gone now. He went away and didn't come back. And Patricia?" Danny looked toward the door, like he was afraid someone might hear. "She gets mad a lot. Says I'm too expensive. Says I eat too much, even though I only eat one time most days. Sometimes her new husband..." "Her new husband?" I interrupted. "Franklin," Danny said. "He came after Michael died. He's mean, Robbie. He makes me work all day with the cattle, and if I do something wrong, Danny trailed off, pulling up his sleeve to show me more bruises. "Says I'm useless. Says I should be grateful they let me stay here at all." I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest, something that had nothing to do with the rain or the temperature. It was rage, pure and simple, but it was the kind of rage that came from years of military discipline, the kind that didn't explode outward but compressed inward, becoming dense and focused and deadly. "Who's Franklin?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Patricia's husband. They got married 2 years ago, I think. Maybe 3? I don't remember. He came from back east somewhere. He wears nice suits and drives the shiny car, the Porsche. Franklin's car. Where is he now?" "They went into town," Danny said. "They go into town a lot, to restaurants and shopping. Sometimes they're gone for days. They leave me food in a cooler over there." He pointed to a small cooler in the corner. I walked over and opened it. There were 2 stale sandwiches inside, and a half-gallon of milk that was 2 days past its expiration date. I took a deep breath. Then another. I needed to think. I needed to plan. The old me, the Rob who'd left Montana at 20 years old, might have stormed back into that mansion and started throwing punches. But I wasn't that person anymore. I was a man who'd spent 22 years learning patience, strategy, and how to identify the enemy's weaknesses before making a move. "Danny," I said, sitting back down next to him, I need you to do something for me. I need you to not tell Patricia or Franklin that I was here. Can you do that?" He looked worried. "Are you leaving again?" "No, buddy. I'm never leaving again. But I need to figure some things out first, and it'll be easier if they don't know I'm around. Do you understand?" He nodded slowly. "Like hide and seek?" "Exactly like hide and seek. I'm going to be hiding for a little while, but I promise I'm going to make everything better. Okay?" "Okay, Robbie." I hugged him again, and this time I let myself feel the full weight of what I was seeing. My brother, living in a shed like an animal. My brother, being worked like a slave and beaten when he made mistakes. My brother, starving slowly while the people who were supposed to care for him lived in luxury bought with money I'd sent for his benefit. I stood up. "I'll be back soon," I said. "But remember, it's hide and seek. Don't tell anyone you saw me." "I won't tell," Danny promised. I walked out of that shed and back to my truck. I sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, just breathing, just thinking. Then I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The first call was to my old army buddy, Marcus Green. Marcus had retired 5 years before me and gone into private investigation. We'd served together in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I trusted him more than almost anyone in the world. "Rob," Marcus said when he answered, "Man, I heard you finally hung up the uniform. Welcome back to civilian life." "Marcus, I need your help," I said. "I need you to run a complete background check on someone. And I need financial records. Everything you can legally get your hands on." "Who's the target?" "Patricia Beaumont. Used to be Patricia McClellan. Lives in Montana. And her husband, Franklin Beaumont. I need to know everything about them. Where the money came from for renovations, what assets they have, everything. This personal?" "Very," I said. "Give me 48 hours. The second call was to James Chen, a lawyer I'd met during my time at the Pentagon. James specialized in elder law and financial exploitation cases. I explained the situation, and he listened without interrupting. "First thing tomorrow," James said when I finished, "I want you to take photographs. Document everything. The condition of the shed, the lack of proper food, the bruises on your brother's arms. Then I want you to find the original power of attorney documents. We need to see exactly what authority you gave them and whether they've exceeded it. What are my options? If what you're telling me is true, we're looking at financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, possibly elder abuse, potentially embezzlement. Montana takes this seriously. We can petition for emergency guardianship, freeze their assets, and force a full accounting of every penny you sent them. If they've been using your money for personal expenses while neglecting your brother's care, they could face criminal charges. How long will this take? With proper documentation, emergency guardianship could be granted within a week. The full financial investigation will take longer, but once we get a judge's order, they'll have to produce records. Rob, I need you to do something important. Don't confront them yet. Don't let them know you're building a case. If they think you're onto them, they might destroy evidence or transfer assets. I'm not going to do anything stupid, I assured him. I know. You're military. You know how to follow a strategic plan. Let's run this operation by the book. The third call was to the county sheriff's office, but I didn't leave my name. I just asked about the procedure for reporting suspected abuse of a vulnerable adult and what kind of evidence would be needed. The deputy I spoke to was professional and thorough, and by the time I hung up, I had a clear picture of what needed to happen. I drove to the Ponderosa Inn, checked into a room, and spent the rest of the evening researching Montana law on my laptop. Vulnerable adult abuse, financial exploitation, guardianship law, property rights. I read until my eyes burned, and I'd filled a notebook with notes. The next morning, I waited until I saw the Porsche and the Mercedes both leave the property. Then I drove back to the ranch, parked out of sight, and spent 3 hours documenting everything. I photographed Danny's shed from every angle. The rotten walls, the inadequate heating, the pitiful food supply. I photographed the bruises on Danny's arms and the 2 big clothes he was wearing. I photographed the mansion, the expensive cars, the landscaping that must have cost $30,000. Danny let me into the main house while everyone was gone. I photographed the inside, the marble floors, the commercial-grade kitchen, the home theater. The master bedroom with a California king bed and an ensuite bathroom bigger than Danny's entire shed. I found property tax records in a file cabinet, renovation invoices, credit card statements showing shopping sprees and five-star restaurant bills. And I found the bank statements. Over the 22 years I'd been sending money, I'd transferred a total of $648,000. According to the statements, approximately $200,000 had been spent on actual ranch operations and Danny's basic needs. The remaining $448,000 had been spent on personal expenses. The house renovation, $280,000. Cars, $90,000. Vacations, $30,000. Clothing, jewelry, entertainment, furniture, the rest. I photographed every single page. Then I found something else. A folder labeled Legal Documents. Inside was a copy of the power of attorney I'd signed, and beneath it, something I'd never signed, a deed transfer. Dated 2019, it showed the ranch property being transferred from my name to Patricia's name. My signature was on it, but I'd never signed that document. I'd never even seen it before. They'd forged my signature and stolen my ranch. I photographed that too, making sure to capture the signature in detail. I'd have a handwriting expert compare it to my actual signature, but I already knew what they'd find. When I was done, I locked the house back up, said goodbye to Danny, and reminded him again not to tell anyone I'd been there. Then I drove back to the motel and called Marcus. "I've got preliminary information for you," Marcus said. "Franklin Beaumont is interesting. Real name is Franklin DeMarco. Changed it legally in 2018. He's got a record. Fraud, embezzlement, served 18 months in Pennsylvania in 2015. Got out in 2016, moved west, met Patricia, apparently through some kind of dating site for wealthy singles. Guy's a professional con artist. Patricia know about his record? Hard to say. But here's the thing. Their financial situation before he showed up was shaky. Patricia was carrying significant debt. Mortgage on the ranch property was in default, and she'd maxed out several credit cards. Then Franklin shows up. They get married, and suddenly there's money flowing everywhere. New cars, home renovations, expensive vacations. I'm still tracking where it all came from, but based on the timeline you gave me, I'd say they were spending your money as fast as you sent it. Can you trace it? Prove that the money I sent was used for personal expenses? With the bank statements you photographed? Absolutely. James is going to have a field day with this. I sent all the photographs to James Chen, and 2 days later, he filed an emergency petition in Montana District Court. The petition requested immediate guardianship of Danny, a freeze on all assets purchased with my money, and a full forensic accounting of every transaction Patricia and Franklin had made since they'd taken over Danny's care. The judge granted the emergency guardianship within 72 hours. County Social Services removed Danny from the shed and placed him in a supervised care facility while the investigation proceeded. When the sheriff's deputies served the papers to Patricia and Franklin, I was there, sitting in my truck across the road, watching. I saw Patricia's face when she read the documents. I saw Franklin try to bluster and threaten the deputies. I saw them both realize that their comfortable life was about to collapse. That's when I finally walked up to the house. Patricia saw me coming and went pale. "Rob, listen, there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I said calmly. "I've seen the bank statements. I've seen the forged deed. I've seen how you kept my brother living in a shed while you spent the money I sent for his care on luxury cars and house renovations. There's no misunderstanding here. Patricia." Franklin stepped forward, trying to intimidate me with his height and his expensive suit. "You can't prove anything, old man. That deed is legal. The ranch is in Patricia's name now." "The deed is forged," I said. "I've already had a handwriting expert analyze the signature. It's not even a good forgery. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate fully with the forensic accountant. You're going to turn over every receipt, every statement, every document showing where my money went. And if you're very lucky, you might only face civil penalties instead of criminal charges." "You threatening me?" Franklin said, stepping even closer. I didn't move. 22 years in the Army, including 3 combat deployments, teaches you not to be intimidated by guys in suits. No threat, Just facts. The judge has frozen all assets purchased with funds I sent for Danny's care. That includes this house, those cars, probably half the stuff in your closets. You're going to lose everything. The only question is whether you also go to jail. Patricia started crying. Rob, please. We can work this out. We did our best with Danny. But he's difficult. He needs constant supervision. He needs food, I interrupted. He needs shelter. He needs basic human dignity. You gave him none of those things. You beat him. You starved him. You kept him in a shed while you lived like royalty on money that was meant for his care. We didn't beat him, Franklin protested. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photographs of Danny's bruises. You gonna tell me he did this to himself? Franklin's face went red, but he didn't answer. The forensic accounting took 4 months. In the end, the accountant's report showed that of the $648,000 I'd sent over 22 years, only $173,000 had been spent on legitimate ranch operations and Danny's care. The remaining $475,000 had been spent on personal expenses that had no connection to Danny's well-being. James Chen filed both civil and criminal complaints. The civil case sought full restitution plus damages. The criminal case charged Patricia with financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and Franklin with fraud and conspiracy. The forged deed was the nail in the coffin. When forensic analysis confirmed my signature had been faked, Franklin folded like a cheap tent and took a plea deal. 3 years in prison. Patricia got 2 years, suspended sentence, and a judgment requiring her to repay $475,000. Since she didn't have anywhere near that amount, the court seized all assets purchased with my money. The house, the cars, the furniture, everything went to auction, and the proceeds went into a trust fund for Danny's care. The ranch property reverted to my name once the forged deed was voided. I sold it a year later for $1.2 million and used that money, plus the restitution funds, to set up a comprehensive trust for Danny. It pays for his care in a licensed group home where the staff actually cares about him, where he has his own room with a real bed, where he gets 3 meals a day and activities he enjoys. I bought a smaller place about 5 miles from the group home. Just 10 acres, nothing fancy, but enough room for a couple of horses and a vegetable garden. I visit Danny every single day. We sit on the porch of the group home and watch the sunset, just like I'd imagined doing when I was deployed in places where the sun felt like it was trying to kill you. Sometimes Danny asks me where Patricia went. I tell him she had to go away for a while. He nods, seems to accept it, and then he asks if we can feed the horses tomorrow. The answer is always yes. I'm 63 years old now, and I spent 41 years of my life serving my country. I'm proud of that service. But my biggest failure wasn't any military operation that went wrong or any mission I couldn't complete. My biggest failure was trusting the wrong people with the care of someone who couldn't protect himself. I can't get those 22 years back. I can't undo the neglect and abuse Danny suffered while I was gone. But I can make sure that every single day he has left is better than the days that came before. That's my new mission now. No more deployments. No more being halfway around the world when the people I love need me. I'm home. Finally, truly home. And I'm never leaving again.